The alien queen married a human for peace, then watched his power shake the stars. The galaxy was a place of endless wonders, but also endless dangers. Stars burned with life, planets teemed with unknown creatures, and civilizations rose and fell across the vast blackness. Among all the empires that stretched across space, none was as feared as the dominion of Queen Seralith. She ruled with a mind as sharp as any weapon, and a will as unyielding as the hardest starstone. Her empire had grown for centuries, conquering planets not for cruelty, but for survival, shaping a society where intellect and discipline were the highest virtues. Yet even Queen Seralith could feel the tremors of a looming disaster. Across the stars, a human coalition had grown strong. They were young compared to her people, but resourceful, adaptable, and cunning. Their fleets moved quickly, their technology was clever, and their leaders were known for unpredictable strategies. The council of her empire whispered constantly about human arrogance, yet no one could deny their effectiveness in battle. Rumors of a coming war had reached every corner of her palace. If conflict broke out between the humans and her dominion, countless worlds would be destroyed, millions would die, and the balance of the galaxy would shatter. Seralith had always relied on strength to maintain order. Her advisors suggested mobilizing fleets, demonstrating her power, and teaching the humans a lesson before they became dangerous. But she paused, reflecting on the value of life and the cost of war. She had seen planets turn to dust, families torn apart, and civilizations crumble under the weight of endless conflict. Perhaps there was another way, a path that did not demand blood and fire. It was then that the idea came to her, bold and unsettling. She would marry a human. Not a human noble, not a war hero, but a diplomat. A man named Elias Cade, known throughout human space for his calm mind, intelligence, and ability to resolve impossible situations. He had no claim to power, no armies behind him, yet somehow he had earned respect and trust from those who doubted him most. The thought itself startled her. Marrying a human was unprecedented. The councils would be outraged. Her people would question her judgment. And yet, Seralith felt a strange certainty in her decision. This human might just be the key to peace. Elias Cade had never imagined a proposal like this would come to him. He had spent his life negotiating trade agreements, settling disputes, and preventing conflicts from escalating. But never had he been asked to marry a queen whose name struck fear across the stars. When the message arrived, he was sitting quietly in a human embassy on a bustling planet, studying star charts and planning a mission to stabilize a collapsing colony. The communication was formal, precise, yet unmistakably direct. The queen requested his presence, not for diplomacy, but for something entirely unexpected. Curiosity overcame caution. Elias had grown up on stories of alien rulers and interstellar politics, but he had learned that humans were not defined by fear, but by action. If he refused, the galaxy could spiral toward war. If he accepted, perhaps he could prevent catastrophe without shedding blood. He arrived at the palace, an architectural marvel that floated above a sapphire planet, held aloft by gravitic fields. The structure seemed alive, with flowing towers and bridges that bent light in mesmerizing patterns. Courtiers and advisors bowed and whispered as he passed, observing the human with suspicion and fascination. Many had anticipated an arrival of a grand human fleet or a skilled warrior. Instead, they saw a single man, walking calmly, eyes observing everything with quiet attention. Queen Seralith awaited him in a chamber of crystalline walls that reflected distant stars. She was taller than most humans, with an aura of authority that seemed to bend light itself. Her eyes, dark and intelligent, studied him without judgment. There was no fear, no anger, only calculation and curiosity. "I understand this is unusual," Seralith said, her voice steady and commanding. "But war is coming and the galaxy does not have the luxury of waiting. I offer you a choice. Marry me, and together we can prevent destruction." Elias considered her words carefully. He had negotiated with rulers before, but never faced a proposition like this. He thought of the millions of lives at stake, the countless worlds that could be destroyed if peace failed. He knew the dangers of refusing. "I accept," he said finally with a clarity that surprised even him. "Not for power, not for glory, but for the chance to save lives." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Seralith's advisors stiffened, and even some courtiers gasped. A human accepting a queen's hand without hesitation was almost unheard of. Yet Sarilith smiled faintly, a gesture rare for her people. Perhaps she had chosen wisely. Preparations for the marriage began immediately. The palace was filled with activity, as emissaries from across the galaxy arrived to witness the unprecedented union. Sarilith insisted that Elias learn the customs of her people, the languages, the rituals, and the history that shaped her empire. He spent hours each day studying, observing, and practicing with patience and determination. It was not easy. Sarilith's court was a place of high expectations and subtle dangers. One misstep could offend a noble, one mistake could be interpreted as weakness. Yet Elias navigated these challenges with a combination of humility and intellect that gradually earned respect. He asked questions where others would guess, listened where others would argue, and learned quickly the subtle patterns of alien diplomacy. Slowly, whispers began to circulate among the court. Perhaps the human was different. Perhaps he was not simply a pawn, but someone who could contribute, who could think and act with insight that even their most trained strategists lacked. Sarilith watched him closely, noting the way he analyzed situations, treated her people with respect, and maintained calm under scrutiny. There was something rare in his mind, something that even her most trusted advisors could not fully understand. Weeks passed, and Elias and Sarilith grew more accustomed to each other's presence. They walked through gardens of floating flora, discussed the governance of planets, and debated strategies to protect fragile worlds. Though different in every way, they began to understand one another. Sarilith admired his morality and courage, while Elias admired her intelligence and decisiveness. Yet, despite these small moments of understanding, tension remained. There were those who opposed the union, plotting in shadows, testing the limits of Elias' patience, and challenging Sarilith's trust in him. Every minor incident became a test, and every response mattered. One evening, while walking through a corridor illuminated by the soft glow of distant stars, Sarilith asked Elias a question that weighed heavily on her mind. "Do you understand what you have accepted? This is not a ceremonial role. You will be expected to make decisions that affect billions. Your choices could save worlds or doom them." Elias looked out at the galaxy stretching infinitely before them, stars twinkling like distant fires. "I understand," he said quietly. "I may not have power like you, but I will use what I do have to protect life. That is my duty and my promise." For the first time, Sarilith felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this human could do what others could not. Perhaps together they could prevent the war that threatened to consume everything. The wedding day arrived, a spectacle unlike any seen in the galaxy. Planets aligned, emissaries gathered, and the palace shimmered in the light of distant suns. As Sarilith and Elias stood before their people, their hands joined, a sense of awe filled the air. This was more than a marriage, it was a symbol, a declaration that even in a galaxy full of fear and power struggles, courage, morality, and intelligence could create something new. As the ceremony concluded, Elias felt the weight of responsibility settle upon him. He was no longer a mere diplomat. He was a human standing at the center of a delicate peace, surrounded by alien traditions, powerful technology, and the expectations of billions. Yet rather than fear, he felt determination. Sarilith watched him, noting the calm resolve in his eyes. She had married for peace, but she could sense that this human held more than wisdom, he held potential. Potential that, if nurtured, could shift the balance of the stars themselves. The first night after the wedding, as the palace quieted and the stars blazed in silence, Sarilith and Elias spoke long into the night. They shared stories of their worlds, of their struggles and triumphs, and began to weave the first threads of understanding between two civilizations. Sarilith realized that the human had a rare gift, not just intellect, but empathy, insight, and courage that transcended species. Unbeknownst to them, beyond the palace walls, the galaxy was already beginning to notice the change. Enemy fleets hesitated, spies reported anomalies, and whispers of the human's wisdom spread. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but a shift had begun. A single human standing beside a queen could create ripples that would one day shake the very stars. Elias did not yet know the extent of his influence. He did not yet understand the power he held, not in weapons or armies, but in decisions, strategies, and moral clarity. For now, he focused on learning, observing, and understanding the people he now called allies. He walked carefully, knowing that every choice mattered. Queen Sarilith, watching him, felt a mixture of pride and curiosity. She had married for peace, but she had also discovered something she had not anticipated, a mind unlike any she had ever seen, a human mind that might be the greatest force for good the galaxy had ever known. And so, as the first night passed over the palace, the stars shone brighter, perhaps sensing the union of two extraordinary beings. The galaxy, unaware of what was to come, began its slow turning toward a future where courage, wisdom, and humanity could change the course of history. This was only the beginning. Weeks passed since the wedding, yet the galaxy did not slow its motion. If anything, tension seemed to ripple more visibly now that the human Elias Cade had married Queen Sarilith. Across distant systems, rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered that the human held no real power, a figurehead for diplomacy. Others suggested that he might be far more than a man, that the marriage had somehow gifted him abilities beyond imagination. In the palace, life settled into a rhythm, but subtle shifts were noticeable. Court officials observed Elias carefully. They tested him with complex protocols, presented scenarios with hidden traps, and watched for weaknesses. He responded not with arrogance but with calm precision. When advisors attempted to confuse him with alien customs or ambiguous protocols, he learned quickly and responded with insight that surprised even the queen. Sarilith could feel the difference. It was more than intelligence. There was something in Elias that resonated with the universe itself, as if he could sense patterns invisible to ordinary beings. She observed him while he studied star maps in the palace's observatory, tracing lines of gravitational pull and orbital anomalies. He did not use alien technology or supercomputers. Instead, he relied on observation, logic, and intuition. It started with small things. Supplies meant for distant colonies would sometimes go missing, yet Elias predicted shortages and rerouted shipments before anyone noticed a problem. Minor skirmishes in remote sectors of the human coalition were resolved in unexpected ways, often without firing a single shot. The soldiers whispered about the human diplomat who seemed to know every movement before it happened. Even Sarilith's most seasoned generals began to wonder if he was seeing patterns in the stars themselves. At first, the queen doubted herself. She had married for peace, not for miracles. But the more she watched, the more she realized that Elias' insight was not magic. It was human brilliance applied at its highest level. He had an ability to see connections where others saw only chaos, to make decisions that balanced logic with morality. The first real test came unexpectedly. A distant colony, vital for trade and diplomacy, sent a distress signal. The signal indicated that a rogue faction of aliens had taken control, and that the colony's energy core was unstable, threatening a chain reaction that could destroy the planet. The coalition's fleet was far away, and even if they arrived, it would be too late. Sarilith summoned Elias immediately. "You must go," she said. "The council believes there is no hope. Perhaps you can find a solution." Elias studied the data and spoke calmly. "We must stabilize the energy core from here. I will calculate the trajectories and gravitational interactions, then guide the team remotely." The Queen's advisors scoffed at the suggestion. "A human cannot stabilize an alien energy core. It requires our technology and experience." Elias only nodded. "Then we will combine my calculations with your technology. Precision and timing will matter more than raw power." For hours, he analyzed the patterns, calculating the energy fluctuations, gravitational pull, and the timing required to intervene. He instructed a specialized strike team, giving exact movements and sequences to adjust the core's output safely. For anyone else, the task would have been impossible. For Elias, it was a puzzle, a challenge he could solve with patience and logic. As the team executed his instructions, the energy core stabilized. The rogue faction had not even realized that a human had intervened until their systems failed to disrupt the process. The colony was saved without firing a weapon, without losing a single life. Word of the humans' achievement spread quickly, first through whispers in the coalition and then into the records of the alien dominion. Queen Sarilith watched silently, her mind racing. She had married Elias for peace, but now she realized that she had chosen a partner whose abilities could reshape the galaxy. He had acted not as a ruler or a warrior, but as a thinker, a protector, and a strategist. In that moment, she felt a profound respect, bordering on awe. The next challenge came from an unexpected direction. An ancient star system, once a hub of trade and culture, began showing signs of instability. Stars in the system flickered unpredictably, and planets threatened to collide due to gravitational shifts. Scientists from the alien dominion were baffled. Fleet commanders suggested evacuations, but the scale of the danger made it impossible to move every inhabitant safely. Sarilith turned to Elias. "Can this be prevented?" she asked, her voice tense but calm. Elias examined the stellar maps, noting subtle irregularities in the star currents. "Yes, but we must act carefully," he replied. "We cannot force change, we must guide it." Over the following days, he worked tirelessly, combining human ingenuity with alien technology. He instructed the manipulation of energy fields, recalibrated orbital stabilizers, and adjusted fleet positions to use gravitational assist strategically. Each step required precision, intuition, and timing. For anyone else, the task would have been too complex, too delicate. Yet Elias moved confidently, calculating not only the physical forces, but also anticipating how human and alien teams would perform under pressure. When the final adjustment was made, the stars settled. Planets rotated safely in their orbits, and the system stabilized without catastrophe. News of the achievement spread across the galaxy, reaching distant worlds that had never even seen humans before. Some called it a miracle, others called it genius, but Sarilith knew the truth. It was the human mind, applied with patience, courage, and foresight. Not everyone was pleased. There were factions within both the human coalition and the alien dominion who viewed Elias as a threat. If a human could wield such influence, could think so clearly and act so decisively, then power itself might shift unexpectedly. Spies reported his calculations, observers noted his calm demeanor, and rumors began to circulate that the human was no ordinary man, that perhaps he had abilities beyond comprehension. Elias, however, remained unaware of much of this. He focused on solutions, not politics. He believed in protection and cooperation, not fear and control. Yet even without intention, his presence began to change perceptions. Aliens who had once dismissed humans as weak or unpredictable now found themselves consulting Elias for guidance, following his strategies, and witnessing firsthand the unique capabilities of human reasoning. Queen Sarilith noticed the subtle changes in her court. Advisors who had been suspicious began to show respect, generals deferred to his strategies, and even some of her most loyal nobles spoke quietly of the human's wisdom. She realized that the marriage had done more than secure peace. It had introduced a force of intellect and morality that could inspire even the most hardened individuals. The human's influence extended beyond strategy and science. He began to bridge gaps between cultures, connecting humans and aliens through shared knowledge, collaboration, and mutual respect. Where others saw differences, Elias saw opportunity. Where others saw conflict, he saw solutions. Slowly, he began to unify factions that had long been divided by distrust, fear, and pride. Despite these successes, Elias faced challenges that tested more than his intellect. He was constantly observed, tested, and occasionally manipulated by those who feared or envied his abilities. Alien protocols, unfamiliar technologies, and complex social hierarchies created obstacles at every turn. Yet he adapted quickly, learning not only the rules but the nuances, understanding the unspoken expectations, and navigating the subtleties of alien society with patience and wisdom. One evening, Queen Sarilith observed him quietly from the balcony. He was working late, analyzing data from distant colonies and coordinating relief for a planet threatened by a meteor storm. The stars reflected in his eyes, and she felt a mixture of admiration and wonder. This human who had once been a stranger to her world was becoming something extraordinary, not a ruler of armies but a protector of lives, a force for good in the galaxy. "I married for peace," she thought silently, "but perhaps I gained something even greater. This human may change the universe itself." The whispers in the court grew louder, yet Sarilith felt no fear. She understood the truth. Power was not measured in fleets or weapons, but in the ability to act wisely, courageously, and morally. Elias Cade embodied all of these qualities. As the weeks turned into months, his influence grew. Minor disputes across the coalition and alien dominion were resolved through his guidance. Star systems that were unstable began to show signs of order. Colonies once vulnerable to natural and man-made disasters now had strategies to survive and thrive. The galaxy began to see a subtle shift, an invisible hand guiding events toward safety, stability, and cooperation. Some still doubted him. Some still whispered that a human could not be trusted. Yet even the skeptics could not deny the results. Every crisis he touched improved. Every challenge he faced ended not with destruction, but with survival, innovation, and growth. Through it all, Sarilith watched, learning from him as much as teaching him. She realized that the human mind, when combined with courage, morality, and patience, could achieve feats that even centuries of alien wisdom could not. And in watching him, she understood that the true potential of humanity was not in violence or conquest, but in ingenuity, insight, and the courage to act when others hesitated. By the end of the second month after the marriage, the galaxy was already beginning to shift. Alliances strengthened, conflicts dissolved before they could ignite, and even distant civilizations began to take notice of the human who married a queen and changed the course of events without firing a single weapon. Elias Cade, unaware of how extraordinary his influence had become, continued his work quietly, focusing on solutions and protecting lives. And Queen Sarilith, who had once married for peace alone, now realized that she had married a force that could shape the stars themselves. The galaxy was beginning to sense it too. A single human, calm and determined, was quietly altering the balance of power. And those who doubted him would soon learn that his strength lay not in armies or technology, but in something far more remarkable: the human mind. The galaxy had begun to notice the quiet power of Elias Cade, but the full extent of his abilities was still unknown. Even Queen Sarilith, who had married him for peace, could hardly grasp the depth of his mind. Each day, events unfolded that tested his intellect, intuition, and courage, revealing layers of insight that astonished allies and enemies alike. It started with a report from the outer rim of human-controlled space. A research station orbiting a dying star had gone silent. Initial attempts to contact the station failed, and scouts who approached reported strange energy readings emanating from the system. The anomaly was unlike anything recorded before, a fluctuating gravitational field that threatened to collapse the entire system if disturbed. Military leaders advised caution, recommending that the station be abandoned to prevent loss of life. Others suggested sending a fleet to neutralize the threat, though that risked triggering a catastrophic reaction. Sarilith summoned Elias to the council chamber, where her advisors were already arguing over the best course of action. "If we do nothing," one general said, "we lose the station. If we intervene, we risk the system itself." Elias listened quietly, his gaze calm and focused. "Then we do not act as warriors," he said finally. "We act as protectors. I will calculate a solution that preserves life and stabilizes the star." The room fell silent. Some looked at him with skepticism, others with incredulity. "A human stabilize a dying star? It is impossible," another advisor scoffed. Elias did not respond with pride or arrogance. Instead, he began working immediately, studying data streams, gravitational readings, and energy flux patterns. Unlike any alien technologist, he relied on observation, intuition, and logical deduction. He noticed patterns in the star's energy flows that no one else could see, predicting shifts before they happened. Within hours, he had devised a plan. It required precise timing, careful positioning of human and alien satellites, and a delicate balance of energy manipulation. Any error could trigger a chain reaction that would destroy the entire system. Yet Elias coordinated the operation with calm authority, guiding teams on the ground and in orbit through every step. As the satellites adjusted their positions and the energy flows began to stabilize, even the most skeptical advisors could not deny the result. The star's erratic pulses slowed, the gravitational fluctuations diminished, and the research station was saved without a single life lost. Queen Sarilith observed quietly, a mixture of awe and relief washing over her. This human, whom she had married to prevent war, had done something no alien or human had accomplished before. His ability to read patterns, understand forces, and act with precision was unparalleled. She realized that peace had not only been secured, but the galaxy had gained a protector unlike any other. News of Elias' success spread rapidly. Scholars, scientists, and military leaders debated his methods. unable to understand how a single human could manipulate complex forces with such ease. Across alien dominions and human territories alike, whispers grew into discussions, discussions into admiration. The human who married a queen had already begun to change perceptions, proving that intelligence and courage could rival fleets and weaponry. Yet not everyone welcomed his rising influence. In the shadows of the galaxy, rival factions plotted. A coalition of alien warlords, fearful of the human's growing reputation, began to mobilize. They sent envoys to question his authority, spies to monitor his actions, and mercenaries to test his limits. They sought to prove that a human could not wield such power without destruction. Elias, however, remained focused on protection, not fear. He anticipated their moves not through aggression, but through understanding. He calculated probabilities, anticipated their strategies, and positioned resources to prevent harm. When a group of mercenaries attempted to sabotage a critical supply line, Elias had already prepared contingencies. The mission failed without casualties, the mercenaries baffled by the human's foresight. Sarilith watched him quietly, noting how naturally he adapted to threats. He did not rely on brute force or intimidation. He relied on observation, intelligence, and moral clarity. Every challenge became an opportunity for him to demonstrate the power of the human mind, the strength of patience, and the impact of thoughtful decision-making. One of the most significant tests came when intelligence reports indicated that a secretive alien faction had developed a weapon capable of destabilizing entire star systems. The weapon had not yet been used, but even the threat of its deployment could ignite war. Military advisors called for an immediate strike, fearing the consequences of delay. Others suggested sabotage, infiltration, or diplomatic coercion. All options carried immense risk. Elias studied the weapon remotely, examining schematics, energy signatures, and orbital patterns. He noticed a flaw, a minute misalignment in the energy conduits that could be exploited without destroying the system. With precise calculations, he coordinated a remote operation to disable the weapon. Human and alien teams moved under his guidance, adjusting energy flows and correcting the conduit alignment. The operation succeeded flawlessly. The weapon was rendered harmless, the threat neutralized, and the faction's leadership left bewildered. No violence had been necessary, no lives were lost, and the galaxy had avoided a catastrophe that could have changed the balance of power. Word of Elias' accomplishments reached even the most remote colonies. Children learned of the human diplomat who could predict danger and protect entire star systems. Scholars debated his methods, marveling at his ability to combine logic, intuition, and morality. Even the military, initially skeptical, began to respect his strategies, recognizing that true power lay not in destruction, but in preservation and foresight. Despite the admiration, challenges persisted. Some factions continued to question his authority, testing him in subtle ways. Alien bureaucrats attempted to manipulate decisions to expose weaknesses. Human leaders worried that his influence might overshadow traditional command structures. Yet Elias handled every test with calm wisdom, never asserting dominance, always prioritizing protection and collaboration. Queen Sarilith observed all of this, learning from him even as she led her empire. She saw how he bridged cultures, connecting humans and aliens through shared knowledge, respect, and understanding. His presence began to unify factions long divided by fear and distrust. Where others saw conflict, he saw opportunity. Where others saw chaos, he saw patterns and solutions. One pivotal moment came when a previously neutral alien kingdom requested assistance. Their planet faced ecological collapse due to a misaligned artificial climate system. They feared that accepting help would compromise their independence and honor. Elias, understanding their concerns, devised a solution that allowed them to retain control while stabilizing the environment. His plan involved subtle adjustments to atmospheric regulators, energy realignment, and careful coordination with local scientists. The kingdom accepted his guidance and the system stabilized. Crops flourished, water systems balanced, and the inhabitants avoided disaster. The result was so successful that the once reluctant leaders invited him to share knowledge, spreading human techniques and collaborative strategies throughout the sector. With each success, the legend of Elias Cade grew. Stories spread of a human whose mind could solve impossible problems, whose courage ensured survival, and whose decisions preserved life. Queen Seralith realized that the marriage had done more than prevent war. It had introduced a force capable of uniting civilizations and changing the course of the galaxy. The queen herself began to see the truth. Humans were underestimated. Their strength lay not in armies or technology alone, but in ingenuity, moral clarity, and the courage to act when others hesitated. Elias embodied these qualities fully, proving that a single human could alter the fates of worlds without ever raising a weapon. But as his influence expanded, enemies grew wary. Rival empires, secret factions, and ambitious leaders plotted in shadows. They underestimated the human at their peril. Attempts to provoke conflict, disrupt operations, or undermine alliances all failed, often revealing the human's foresight and adaptability. Elias continued his work quietly, never seeking recognition. He focused on observation, analysis, and collaboration, guiding human and alien teams through crises, resolving disputes, and stabilizing volatile systems. His calm demeanor, combined with unshakable logic, inspired confidence even in those who had initially doubted him. Queen Seralith watched him closely. She realized that Elias was more than a diplomat, more than a husband, more than a protector. He was a catalyst, a being whose presence encouraged cooperation, understanding, and moral action across the galaxy. His mind was a weapon of intellect, not destruction, capable of guiding civilizations toward stability, safety, and progress. As Part 3 of the story drew to a close, the galaxy began to sense the change. The presence of a human married to a queen, who acted with wisdom, courage, and foresight, was shifting perceptions. Alliances strengthened, conflicts dissolved before they could ignite, and distant civilizations began to reconsider the role of humans in the wider galaxy. Elias Cade, calm and determined, continued to work without pause. He had not sought fame or power. He sought only to protect life and ensure peace. And in doing so, he had begun to reshape the galaxy, showing all who watched that true power lay not in domination, but in intelligence, morality, and the courage to act when others faltered. Queen Seralith, standing silently in her chamber, reflected on what she had gained. She had married for peace, but she had discovered something far greater, a partner whose mind could predict, protect, and preserve on a scale unimaginable. In watching him, she realized that the future of the galaxy might rest not in fleets or weapons, but in the quiet strength of human ingenuity. And so, the stars waited. The galaxy watched. The human who had married a queen was beginning to show the universe that intellect, courage, and morality could shake not only systems and planets, but the very foundations of civilization itself. This was only the beginning. The galaxy had begun to shift under the quiet force of Elias Cade, but the true test of his influence was only beginning. Reports came from the frontier systems that an old rival faction, thought to be weakened, was reorganizing. They had constructed a fleet capable of overwhelming several human coalition forces at once, and were rumored to possess experimental weaponry that could disrupt entire planetary defenses. The whispers in the corridors of power grew urgent, full of fear and speculation. Queen Seralith convened her council in the Grand Chamber, high above the capital planet. Advisors and generals from both human and alien sectors gathered, their faces tense. If this fleet reaches the core systems, billions could be lost, one general warned. We must strike immediately with full force. Seralith, seated beside Elias, considered the options carefully. The conventional approach, direct attack, would bring massive casualties, both military and civilian. She glanced at Elias, silently asking his opinion. He leaned forward, eyes scanning data from multiple systems simultaneously. "We cannot rely on brute force," he said. "We must anticipate their moves, understand their patterns, and neutralize the threat before it escalates. If we engage them directly, the loss will be catastrophic. There is another way," the council murmured in disbelief. "A human strategy against a fleet that dwarfs our own?" an advisor asked, skepticism laced in every word. Elias smiled faintly, not with arrogance but with quiet confidence. "I do not need to match their fleet in size. I need only to predict their choices, control the environment, and guide our forces where they are most effective." The Queen nodded, knowing that his mind was unparalleled in pattern recognition and strategic foresight. "Then we follow your plan," she said, "and trust in your judgment." Over the next days, Elias worked tirelessly. He studied the rival fleet's historical movements, communication patterns, and resource allocations. Unlike most commanders, he anticipated human and alien tendencies alike, predicting how the enemy would react to any given maneuver. He coordinated with fleet commanders, providing precise instructions that balanced risk with preservation. On the day of the confrontation, the rival fleet emerged from hyperspace in the outer sector, expecting to encounter a scattered human-alien force. Instead, they found themselves guided into a meticulously calculated formation, where gravitational anomalies, fleet positioning, and energy shields were perfectly synchronized. Every move they made played into Elias' strategy. The battle that followed was unlike any in history. Fleets clashed not in chaotic explosions, but in precise, almost artistic maneuvers. Ships moved according to predictions no one else could see. Enemy missiles were neutralized before they could detonate. Weapons misfired or were diverted by subtle gravitational manipulations orchestrated by Elias' team. The rival commanders, confident in their superiority, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. From her vantage point, Queen Serelith watched the unfolding battle with awe. She had seen countless military campaigns, countless victories and defeats, but this was different. There was no randomness, no luck. Every success, every preserved life, every neutralized threat was the direct result of Elias' mind. His strategy was not only brilliant but humane, minimizing casualties while achieving total control over the engagement. As the enemy fleet realized they were trapped, Elias communicated directly with their commanders through secure channels. "You have an opportunity to surrender," he said. "Your fleet will be preserved, your people unharmed. Resist, and the consequences will be severe. I do not wish to destroy you, only to prevent chaos and protect life." The message spread quickly. Some enemy captains surrendered immediately, trusting his words and recognizing the precision of his tactics. Others attempted to fight, only to find themselves isolated, outmaneuvered, and powerless against the invisible threads of strategy Elias had woven. By the end of the engagement, the entire rival fleet had been neutralized without the mass destruction that any other general would have expected. The victory was complete, decisive, and most importantly, merciful. Word of the battle spread rapidly. Across the galaxy, reports hailed a human strategist who had outwitted a superior fleet, neutralized a massive threat, and preserved life in the process. Scholars debated his methods, military leaders studied the engagement, and ordinary citizens marveled at the story. In every report, one fact became clear: Elias Cade was no ordinary human. Back in the palace, Serelith reflected on what she had witnessed. She had married for peace, but the human beside her had shown her that peace could be maintained not just by treaties, but by intelligence, foresight, and courage. She realized that the true power of humanity lay in their ability to think, adapt, and act with moral clarity, even in situations where others would resort to violence. Yet the challenges did not end. The rival faction, humiliated and defeated, retreated to hidden systems, plotting vengeance. They began developing more sophisticated weapons, attempting to anticipate Elias' methods and counter his strategies. Spies infiltrated the coalition and the alien dominion, seeking to uncover his weaknesses. Elias faced these new threats with calm determination. He knew that anticipating moves and analyzing patterns was only part of the solution. He also needed to inspire trust, cooperation, and resilience among his allies. He held training sessions with both human and alien forces, teaching them to adapt, communicate, and think critically in unexpected situations. Slowly, he built a coalition capable not only of following his strategy, but of improvising when necessary, turning potential weaknesses into strengths. One particularly tense moment came when an energy anomaly threatened a major trading hub. A massive solar flare had shifted unexpectedly, putting the city planet at risk of total devastation. Conventional calculations suggested evacuation, but the planet's population was too large to move quickly. Military leaders urged caution, but Elias proposed a bold solution: manipulating orbital satellites and energy fields to redirect the flare's force safely. For hours, he calculated, instructed, and adjusted. Every satellite had to be moved precisely, every energy field synchronized perfectly. Failure would mean death for millions. Yet his confidence never wavered, and his teams followed his guidance with trust and precision. When the flare reached the planet, it struck as planned, redirected harmlessly into space. The city remained intact, its inhabitants safe, and the coalition celebrated another miracle wrought by human ingenuity. The story spread quickly, further solidifying Elias' reputation as a protector, strategist, and savior. As his influence grew, Sarilith noticed changes in her court. Diplomats who had doubted him now deferred to his judgment. Generals who once scoffed now followed his strategies without hesitation. Even rival alien leaders began sending envoys to negotiate directly with him, recognizing that the human married to the queen was more than a symbol. He was a force capable of guiding civilizations and reshaping galactic dynamics. Despite the successes, Elias remained humble. He never sought recognition or personal glory. His goal was simple: to protect life, prevent unnecessary destruction, and ensure peace. Yet his quiet confidence, combined with his unparalleled intellect, inspired admiration across species and systems. Aliens who had long distrusted humans began to see their potential, not in war, but in wisdom, creativity, and moral courage. A turning point came when a distant empire, previously neutral, faced internal rebellion. The rebels had seized advanced weaponry and threatened to destabilize the region. Conventional military action would have resulted in widespread destruction, but Elias proposed an alternative. He would guide negotiations, predict rebel movements, and use strategy to minimize conflict. Through careful planning, communication, and tactical foresight, the rebellion was contained. Weapons were neutralized, leaders were persuaded to negotiate, and lives were spared. The Empire itself hailed the human strategist as a savior. Across the galaxy, the tale spread further. The human who married a queen and wielded no weapons had prevented wars, saved civilizations, and reshaped perceptions of humanity itself. Queen Sarilith observed him quietly, feeling a mix of pride and awe. She had married for peace, but Elias had become a force of nature, a human mind capable of balancing logic, morality, and courage on a scale that shook the stars. She realized that power was not only in armies, technology, or psychic abilities. It was in understanding, foresight, and the will to act decisively and wisely. By the end of this period, the galaxy had begun to shift fundamentally. Alliances strengthened, rival factions hesitated before engaging, and distant civilizations began to reconsider their stance toward humans. Children grew up hearing tales of the human diplomat who could predict events, stabilize star systems, and protect entire populations. Scholars studied his methods, learning lessons in strategy, cooperation, and foresight. Yet Elias never let success cloud his judgment. Every crisis was an opportunity to protect life and inspire collaboration. Every challenge reminded him that even a single mind, applied wisely, could influence the fate of millions. And through it all, Queen Sarilith watched him, understanding that the galaxy's future might rest not on fleets or weapons, but on the quiet strength of a human mind. Elias Cade had married her for peace, but he had become something far greater, a force capable of shaking stars, preserving civilizations, and showing the galaxy the true potential of humanity. As the fourth chapter of their shared journey drew to a close, one truth became undeniable. The galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary. A human, calm, intelligent, and courageous, had demonstrated that power could be wielded without violence, that strategy could protect life rather than destroy it, and that moral clarity could influence civilizations across star systems. The universe was watching. The stars themselves seemed to pulse in anticipation. And the human beside the queen, with nothing but his mind and courage, was poised to show all of existence that true power was not domination. It was wisdom, ingenuity, and the courage to act for the greater good. The galaxy was in motion. Across countless star systems, civilizations watched, waited, and wondered at the quiet power of Elias Cade. He had become more than a diplomat, more than a strategist. He was a symbol of hope, intelligence, and the potential of humanity itself. Yet even as the universe shifted around him, Elias remained focused on his purpose, protecting life, maintaining peace, and guiding civilizations toward a safer future. Queen Sarilith had learned to trust his insight completely. She knew that wherever he looked, danger and opportunity coexisted, and wherever he acted, lives would be preserved. The queen had married for peace, but she now realized that she had married the human who could reshape the stars themselves. She watched him as he analyzed data from the outer rim, coordinating fleets, advising planetary leaders, and guiding scientists. Each decision he made carried weight, yet he moved with calm precision, as if the vastness of the galaxy were a puzzle he was meant to solve. The next challenge arrived without warning. An ancient alien empire, long thought extinct, emerged from the shadows. Their fleets were vast, their technology superior, and their ambition unmatched. They had remained hidden for centuries, preparing a strike that could destabilize the galaxy. Reports indicated that they intended to seize control of multiple key systems, annihilating anyone who resisted. Advisors across the coalition were panicked. "We cannot hope to resist them," one general said. "Their fleets alone could crush entire sectors. We must surrender or prepare for total war." Elias listened quietly, his eyes calm, calculating. "We will not surrender," he said. "We will act. But we will not act with brute force. We will act with foresight, strategy, and precision." The council stared at him, some in disbelief, others in cautious hope. "A human plan against the ancients?" a diplomat asked. "It is impossible." Elias did not waver. "Nothing is impossible if we understand the patterns, anticipate actions, and unite our forces intelligently. War is not always won by strength. It is won by thinking, planning, and acting with clarity." Over the next several days, Elias coordinated an unprecedented coalition. Human and alien fleets, researchers, diplomats, and engineers worked together under his guidance. He divided the enemy forces through clever manipulations of hyperspace routes, gravitational currents, and energy fields. Supply lines were cut, reinforcements delayed, and key positions subtly maneuvered into the coalition's favor. Every move was calculated, yet executed in a way that minimized casualties. Queen Sarilith observed from the command chamber, her confidence in him unwavering. She could see the subtle genius of his methods, how he anticipated the enemy's logic, how he adjusted for human and alien tendencies, and how he ensured that life was preserved wherever possible. Unlike any other leader she had known, Elias treated strategy as both an art and a responsibility. The first engagement occurred at the edge of a nebula, where the enemy fleet attempted to ambush coalition forces. What they encountered was a network of perfectly positioned ships, energy fields, and gravitational traps. Missiles misfired, weapons were deflected, and the enemy's movements were anticipated at every turn. Many commanders could not understand what was happening. Some called it genius, others called it luck. But the truth was Elias' careful calculation applied with perfect timing. As the battle progressed, he communicated directly with enemy leaders, offering surrender and assuring them that cooperation would preserve their fleets and people. Some capitulated immediately, recognizing the futility of resistance. Others attempted to fight, only to be subtly outmaneuvered, isolated, and forced into containment. The result was a stunning combination of victory and mercy. No single life was wasted unnecessarily, and the enemy learned that power could be wielded without cruelty. Throughout these events, stories of Elias Cade spread across the galaxy. Civilizations long divided by fear and prejudice began to communicate, sharing knowledge and resources. Children learned of the human who had married a queen and saved entire star systems. Scholars debated his methods, studying his combination of logic, intuition, and moral clarity. Even rivals began to reconsider humanity itself, recognizing that strength was not always measured by weapons or numbers, but by intelligence, courage, and compassion. Yet challenges persisted. The ancients, though partially contained, were formidable and relentless. They adapted to strategies, tested new tactics, and challenged the coalition at every step. Elias responded with calm ingenuity. He predicted movements, devised contingencies, and coordinated fleets with such precision that even the most seasoned commanders were astonished. Every engagement strengthened the coalition, honed their skills, and reinforced the principle that understanding and foresight could overcome brute force. One particularly tense moment came when a planet critical to coalition supply lines faced annihilation. A series of unstable energy pulses threatened to tear the planet apart. Conventional solutions would have required mass evacuations, yet Elias proposed a daring alternative. He calculated the energy flows, coordinated satellite and orbital adjustments, and directed engineering teams to stabilize the planet without displacing its population. The operation succeeded perfectly. The planet was saved, its inhabitants unharmed, and the coalition marveled at the precision of the humans' guidance. Across the galaxy, Elias' reputation solidified further. He was not a general, not a conqueror, but a protector of civilizations. Queen Seralith, who had long understood the value of intelligence and strategy, now saw the full scope of Elias' influence. He had become a force capable of uniting civilizations, preventing wars and shaping events across star systems. She realized that his strength lay not in might, but in mind, an extraordinary human mind that could read patterns, anticipate dangers, and act decisively while preserving life. The final confrontation with the ancients occurred in a system of interconnected star clusters. The enemy fleet had concentrated its forces, intending to strike at the heart of the coalition. Their technology was advanced, their ships massive, yet Elias had prepared meticulously. He had coordinated fleets across multiple systems, predicted supply chain vulnerabilities, and aligned gravitational anomalies to create natural traps. As the battle began, the coalition executed his plan flawlessly. Enemy ships were guided into zones where their movements were restricted, weapons misfired due to subtle energy shifts, and their formations were broken without direct confrontation. The ancients, confident in their superiority, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Elias maintained constant communication with both allies and enemy leaders, offering negotiation where possible and guidance where necessary. His focus remained on minimizing casualties and preserving the stability of the galaxy. By the end of the engagement, the ancients had been forced into surrender, their fleet largely intact, their leaders humbled but unharmed. The victory marked a turning point in galactic history. For the first time, a human had directly influenced the outcome of interstellar conflict on such a scale, not through conquest, but through intelligence, foresight, and moral clarity. Stories of Elias' achievements spread like wildfire. Planets that had long feared human unpredictability now respected their ingenuity. Civilizations that had once clashed began to cooperate, inspired by his example. Queen Seralith stood beside him as the coalition celebrated. She realized that the galaxy had not only been saved from immediate danger, but had been transformed. Elias had demonstrated that humanity could rise to extraordinary heights, not through brute force or domination, but through intellect, courage, and compassion. As the celebrations continued, Elias remained thoughtful. He knew that the galaxy was vast and dangers would continue to emerge. Yet he also understood that the alliances, knowledge, and trust built during these trials would provide a foundation for peace and stability far into the future. His influence had shown that even a single human, acting wisely and morally, could change the course of civilizations. In the quiet moments, Seralith approached him. "You have done more than I imagined," she said softly. "You have not only secured peace, but you have shown the galaxy what humans are capable of. I see now why I trusted you." Elias smiled humbly. "I did what any of us would do if given the chance. The galaxy deserves protection, life deserves preservation, and wisdom, when applied correctly, can accomplish what strength alone cannot." The queen nodded, a rare smile crossing her features. She had married for peace, but she had discovered a partner whose mind could protect worlds, inspire civilizations, and reshape the future. In Elias Cade, she saw the embodiment of human potential, the courage to act, the wisdom to guide, and the clarity to change the stars themselves. As the first light of a new galactic cycle shone across countless star systems, the coalition began to solidify into a unified force. Humans, aliens, and even former enemies worked together, sharing technology, knowledge, and culture. Conflicts that once seemed inevitable were resolved through negotiation, planning, and cooperation. The galaxy had changed profoundly, not through conquest or domination, but through the example of a human who married a queen and demonstrated the extraordinary power of intellect, morality, and courage. Elias Cade's name became legend. Across the stars, beings of countless species spoke of the human who had married for peace and acted to preserve life on an unprecedented scale. Children learned of his strategies, scholars studied his methods, and leaders sought his counsel. Humanity, once underestimated, was now respected, admired, and trusted. Queen Seralith looked out at the stars beside him, understanding fully the transformation that had occurred. She had married a human to prevent war, but together they had shown the galaxy a higher way, a path where wisdom, strategy, and morality could guide civilizations, protect life, and change the very balance of the cosmos. And as Elias stood beside her, calm, determined, and unwavering, the stars themselves seemed to acknowledge the truth, that true power was not measured in fleets or weapons, but in mind, courage, and the will to act for the greater good. Humanity had proven itself. The galaxy would never be the same,